Hello, everybody. This is the first of a series of Houdini role modeling tutorials that I've been working on with Fuels, and we're going to be taking you through the basics of how to do procedural modeling in Houdini and just kind of how to think about it, because it's a little bit different that you're probably used to if you're coming from something like Maya or 3D Max or whatever, where you can just select a face and extrude it or do whatever you want. This is much more programmatic, much more procedural, and uh, just takes a little bit more planning, uh, but the payoff can be huge. So before we get into this, I'm just kind of assuming that you've watched like a Houdini intro video. You kind of know what I'm talking about when I'm looking at nodes and stuff. I'm going to take you through all the nodes that I'm working with, which will be basically, the primitive box here, some group creates, poly extrude, merge, which are all sort of some basic tools that you'll probably use again. Actually, that's pretty much all I use in this example, and then we add a few more in later. So, if you haven't, you might want to pause here and start with that. I'll also just say in terms of the licensing and that, everything you're doing in Houdini here, you should be able to do in the free version of Houdini, the Apprentice. This is kind of the limited commercial, so it's the indie license. So really the only difference is that will allow me to export the digital assets from Houdini and then import them into Unity. So if you're just getting started and you're not sure what kind of license you want, I would just start out with the free one. You can do all the modeling, you can learn Houdini, all that stuff, and then later on, when you need it for a project, you can get the other license if you decide to. But you should be able to follow along in the free versions and all that sort of stuff. Also, I'll just kind of bookend this with saying, like, I'm pretty new to Houdini myself, so I definitely can relate to some of the frustrations people feel, and it can be a little tricky. So I'm gonna do my best to explain it, but I apologize in advance if I'm messing up some of the terminology, or if you're like a Houdini expert and saying, "Oh, you're doing it all wrong." Like, by all means, let me know, and we're actually going to be doing more videos and then like a follow-up session as well, which will be another live stream that you can tune into. So if you have questions or comments, or you want to see more of a particular thing, please let us know, and we'll do our best to accommodate that. So without any further ado, let's get into this. So this is what I'm going to basically show you in this first video. It's just like a really simple little spaceship. There's not really much to it, and we're able to actually adjust it kind of using just changing the size of this box. Now, obviously you could get a lot more complicated than this and get into all the detailing, but I think in general, the basic stuff you'll see here is kind of a good starting place. And, we can get more advanced as we go. So this is kind of the goal. We're going to build this little box ship, and I'll show you a few of the techniques I'm using to do this. And like I said, if you guys have better techniques, by all means, let me know, because I'm still learning this. So one of the best things about Houdini, in my opinion, is that you can just start with a box, and then we have this whole sort of graph laid out here, all the nodes, and it sort of flows down in execution, but it's really nice for doing these kind of tutorials because I can just kind of step you through it. So we're going to actually be releasing these files as well so that you can follow along on your own and see all the little details and stuff, but I'll do my best to kind of remember what I did here. So first of all, I'm going to start it with a box just to keep it simple. I'll show you a later example where I get a little fancier. And the first thing I'm going to do here, and the first node that I'm going to create, and let's see what the settings here. So I have it set to polygon. There's a bunch of different ways we can make primitives, but I'm just going to use a polygon, consolidate my sort points, all sort of stuff. And I'm just adjusting the size. Now this size is going to determine the overall structure of the body of the ship. So, kind of take note, we're going to come back and use this again later. First thing I want to do though is just create a very simple group here to allow for selection of a particular subset of this box. And these other ones showing up are just some of these other, I have a couple here. So there we go. So we have our box, we have the front face, and I'm just going to walk you through the group node a little bit and talk about what some of these settings do. So first of all, one thing to be a little bit careful of is there is both the name of the node. So the node is called front one, the actual group node itself. The group it's creating is front group. So I'm making a group within the node. One of the mistakes I made when I was doing this the first time was I kind of got that mixed up, and your group names won't show up. So if you're not seeing your group names, just double check that. And we'll kind of talk about some of these settings later on, but we have a primitive set, and don't really worry about that for now. We don't really have a base group for now. And I'm going to use mostly this keep by normals. So this keep in bounding regions is really cool too. You can have like another box and kind of, set the area that you want to select within. But I'm going to use this keep by normals because what I really want here is the front of the box. Now, this is a little bit funny in terms of setting the direction. What you're actually doing is you're giving it a vector, and that is going to determine the direction. So if I want a vector in the z direction, I like to use z as my forward vector. See, there's a little widget down in the corner here. It shows me which one's which. If I want to get the positive c or positive z vector, or the vector on the z-axis, or the front, I really just want to set this to 1 and these to 0. And that's going to say, hey, grab everything on the front of the box here. I also am going to just set this spread angle. So if it's too low, it won't select, well, 0, actually it'll select anything. But I'm going to leave it a little bit higher just so in case this gets tilted or we have other stuff going on. It doesn't really matter, but as it gets more procedural, I'll show you why you might want to fix this. But if I put this too high, like say I put it over 90, you see it's actually selecting everything within 90 degrees of that front angle. So that's kind of how this normals is working, this keep by normals. So I'm just gonna set this something to like 10 here. So now we have created a group. That group is called front group. And what a group basically is just simply a selection of something. So in this case, it's a selection of faces. And I'm selecting the front face of this cube. And you can see I've kind of done this all the way through. So I have one for the rear. And that is just, if I select this, it's just -1 on Z. And I have one for the top. And again, it is simply the 1 on the y-axis and 0 on the other two. And that's going to give me my up vector. The bottom is going to be -1. So that's how I'm determining which face is which. And this is kind of where I'm going to start out. Now, there's a couple different techniques to do this. I broke this into different streams just to kind of keep it organized. But often what you'll see is something more like this, where the groups are actually getting passed kind of downstream. So I also could have created all these groups, on one, I could have stacked them up like this, and I would then have all the groups appearing here. I could actually go and you can see there, but I should have anyway the groups all the way down there. So this is another technique. So for example, for the wings, what I actually wanted to do was create two groups. So I created the left group and then I created the right group, and I put them on the same stream here. And then when I made this group create for both of them, I wanted to make one that both sides were selected. So you can see so there we go. So I can see that both sides are selected at the same time. All I've done here is I've said, hey, set my base group to right group and left group. And you can either just type that in or you can choose it from this little drop down. And then I'm setting the group name of both sides group. So now I have a single group selection that encompasses both of these. So it's not totally necessary. I could have probably got away without it. But if you want to kind of combine groups into more complex shapes, this is kind of one way you can do it, is just by kind of stacking these up. Okay, so that's the very basics. That's just like how to select things. The next thing I'm going to do is just go down here a little bit and I'm going to go to a poly extrude. So I'm going to just like put on this poly extrude and I'm going to set my group to front group. So what I'm really, again, I can just grab from the drop down. And what I'm going to do here really is I'm going to set that I'm going to extrude only this front group. So you can see here, only this front face is extruding. I just have a little gotcha when you're working with poly extrude too, if you're not used to it. So this is also a poly extrude node. And when you put a poly extrude on for the first time, it starts out with a distance and an inset of 0. So you might put it in and be like, I don't see, my group selected. I don't see, this isn't working. But it's actually, you just have to kind of like give it some settings so that you can actually see what's happening. So if you're new to poly extrudes, watch out for that. It's a little gotcha. Okay, so going back to where I was here, I have my front group and I'm extruding it, and I'm just gonna, so let's see what some of these settings are. So I have a little bit of a distance and I have a little bit of an inset. You could do cool stuff like you twist it if you want, crazy thing like that. You could add divisions if you want to do that sort of stuff. I'm not going to worry about that too much, but I think one thing you should be kind of noting as you go through this is like which settings are useful to you. Because what we're going to do later is we're actually going to make an interface that will allow you to edit these at a later time. Okay, so I basically am just going to do the same thing. So I'm going to go, let's do the wings here next. So I didn't really do the top and bottom on this version. It's pretty simple. And I'm going to kind of do these wings. So I extrude the base. And now I just want to show you another quick trick here when you're using extrusions and groups is there's this output geometry and group here. So there's a couple things going on. One is you're choosing whether you want to, like, which of the faces you want to actually create, first of all. So output front is going to turn on these faces. Output back is going to turn on the interior face, right? You can kind of see it there. There's my back. Output side is the actual like sides of the extrusion. Now, this is really useful because you often are extruding and then say I only want to select the front face here. I don't want to have to make a whole new group node and like make another group. So what I can actually do is just click this little checkbox, front group, and this is actually going to create a new group out of this front output. So this is very, very convenient. And what it's going to allow me to do in the next one here is when I go to my second poly extrude, I'm just going to set, well, in this case, I'm just doing both sides group. So it's kind of just extruding things here. What's going on? Okay, I have that. And this, this even might be a bit of an error. I'm just extruding front wing, wings, rear detail. Okay, so they're creating these groups. Side. So yeah, so I've extruded these a couple times. And then, I want to get this rear detail, for example. So I've kind of made this. Okay, so I'm making this rear detail wings selection. I'm doing a mix of things here. So I'm sort of combining those options. So what I'm actually doing is using a base group, right? So I'm selecting my extrude side. So I'm selecting the sides of this. And then I'm also adding a keep by normals. So I'm selecting the sides of my extrusion, plus I'm setting a vector, in this case the back, the -z, and a spread for what to select. So if I wanted to select these, which are kind of at an angle, this is where the spread angle comes in. I could actually just expand that a little bit. Selection, but I kind of like it. I'm just going to leave it. So this is kind of just a little bit of an introduction of how you can start to mix and match these groups and that sort of thing. And one thing, again, to be careful with when you're just kind of starting out, especially, is if you are selecting these nodes, you can select the node, but until you hit this little eyeball, it's not showing the nodes. You can actually have this node selected, for example. I can have this one selected, but I can have this one being shown. So just be kind of careful if you're new to this. It's a little funny. It looks like I have an error here. If you see this little thing, it means you have an error, and you can click it and it'll pop up. Bad pattern, specified extrude side. So, this is telling me that the group I'm selecting is not valid. And okay, read about it. Extrude side wing. So probably what I actually want is this extrude side. And if I go back here and set the base side, I'm hoping that will solve itself. Yeah, so there's the side selection of both those extrusions. The other thing you might notice is that this extrude side wing is getting, I have extrude side wing on this particular node, right? So you can kind of see what it is if I do that. So I'm setting it. I have division set to 2 in this case. And you'll notice that it's pretty robust, even if I'm changing the divisions or I'm adding a twist. Even it's keeping that selection. So this is one of the cool things about this. Like it's pretty flexible. You can really mess with the settings, kind of right up until it's finished. And okay, so I have my side selection, and then I'm going to add to my side selection my keep by normals. And now what I've basically done is made a sub selection of the sides in that direction. Now, in this case, I probably could have just only used this because it's kind of the same. But you'll notice here that by adding the base group, I've actually filtered out this back. So this was actually kind of an error earlier. I only want the back of the wings. I don't want the back of this. So normally, if I was just using only keep by normals, I would end up with every surface. So that's kind of why I'm combining the both of them. I'm going to just get these little selections, and then I'm going to give it a detail, wings, rear detail. I really recommend like putting a little bit of thought into the group name because it kind of becomes hard to change it. Like you can see even my little mistake here, if I name it wrong, it doesn't find it and it just kind of throws a warning. So you just sort of have to be a little bit careful about that. And then at this point, I just want to do this little extrude detail and an inset, and I'm just basically what all I'm doing here, oops, is you can see that so this is my detail. Oops. This is what, okay. So the group is called wings rear detail, and I'm basically just grabbing the previous group and feeding it in here to extrude. And you can see again, I can select these output front. So when I want to go make this engine detail here, where I'm insetting only the middle, what I can do to do that is simply you so I'm outputting the front, and then when I'm extruding again, it's just kind of that automatically. And I can divide, or I can set it as individual. Acted for now. So I'm just doing these little simple details. There's probably some mistakes here, but this is kind of the basics of sort of how you can start adding detail, and you can just kind of keep going with it. Right. Front detail, rear detail. Here we go. So I did sort of the same thing in the back. So it's kind of, this is kind of hacky, like most of you are probably better artists than, but you can kind of see all I'm doing here. And this one's just like a little more complicated. So the rear, I'm simply going rear face, extrude the back. I'm using a knife tool in this case. So I'm using a knife tool, and I'm selecting the group front. So this group I'm setting is what I'm starting from. So I'm selecting the rear group, right? And you can see if I shut this off, it's extruding everything. So if I turn this back on, it's only selecting the back face. The same thing as here when I'm selecting these poly extrudes on the details, I'm selecting wings rear detail, which is the group that I created here. That's what's going on. So these groups keep passing through as well. So once I have this wings rear detail, I can grab it and I can just kind of keep selecting it. So I'm just, this one's poly extruding from the detail. It's a little confusing because if you're going from a group create, this is setting the name of the group, but the extrusion, this is select, or sorry, the poly extrude, this is selecting the name of the group. So just watch out for that. It's a little. So in this case, I'm actually saying engine inset detail. I'm actually selecting the extrude front wing engine inset, which is a group that I made here. So that's actually what. Sorry, I was a little bit confused with that for a second. But extrude wing front engine inset. So I'm creating this front face, right? And then in this next one, I'm, oh, I broke it again. What happened? Extrude one wing engine inset is not a valid group. So it's like that because I disabled it for a minute. And what did I do? Oh, I added a 4. There we go. See, the naming's really touchy, so just kind of watch out for that sort of stuff. You got to be a little careful, but it'll show you that little warning if it can't find the group, so that can give you some hints. So I'm selecting the group extrude front wing, and I'm extruding it in this case by giving it a negative distance, and I could give it, I could inset it a little bit and give it deeper. You got to be a little bit careful with this because I'm starting to get this kind of overlap. Which, there's probably ways to fix, but we'll just sort of wait it for the time being. And there we go. So we have this kind of detailing, and I'm doing exactly the same thing on the rear engine. I'm selecting a poly extrude for the rear. I'm selecting a knife tool, and again, I'm selecting the group here. So again, if it's a tool that uses a group as input, the group up here is selecting the name, not creating the name. But the names will continue. So the groups are still available. So if I wanted to go all the way down to the bottom or whatever to merge, and we'll talk about how to clear this up later, or, poly extrude here, whatever. If I go to select groups, you can see that all the groups I've created are actually still here. So rear group, extrude front. And actually in this case, I'm actually selecting multiple groups and kind of extruding from both of them. So in this case, though, the knife, I'm simply grabbing the group and I'm just setting a direction here. So this is on the X axis, and you can kind of see here. So this is X. And yeah, and I'm even creating other groups here. So create groups, and I have an above plane and a below plane. So I can actually select individual sides of this engine if I want. In this case, what I'm actually doing is I'm selecting the left and the right plane. I'm just leaving a space between them. So there's both of them. And I'm dividing them into individual elements. And then I'm extruding them. So that's what's kind of giving me this nice like engine detail. So that's one way you can start to kind of like break this apart, is just, adding some edges. And then a lot of these tools will actually create the groups for you if you kind of know where to look. Again, I'm extruding the front, so this is going to give me that face. And then I'm starting, in this case, I don't know if I'm actually doing this right here. I'm starting with the whole rear group. So that might not be exactly what I want. I might actually want to have it front instead. Doesn't seem to make a difference, but that's just the interior face. So the poly extrudes seem to be playing nicely together when you're stacking them up, but you just want to watch all over it. And in this case, I can inset it a little bit maybe, and cut it in a bit more, whatever you want to do. I think I want it to just have a bit of a edge, and then I'm going to do that one more time, and I'm gonna adjust these. And there you go. You have some nice engine details, all fully procedural and customizable. And then we feed it into the merge at the bottom, and this is basically going to combine everything into one object. If you are a Houdini expert, you probably know that I've caused myself a whole whack of problems by doing it this way. And so the next video, I'll show you what I did wrong, what the problem is, and how you can fix it. So that's not a cliffhanger. I don't know what is. Tune into the next video and I'll show you what is wrong with this model. Thanks for watching. And again, if you have any feedback or comments or questions, please let us know.